Warning, this video contains mild anatomical nudity.
Greetings all you fearfully wonderful, I am Joe Mistopheles, here carrying out a PewDiePie reading challenge on ancient Eastern religious and philosophical literature. Wow! For the month of April we went through Epictetus, a former slave who, upon emancipation, moved to the coasts of Greece whereupon he started a philosophy school. He is most famous for his unique flavors and contribution to Stoicism, a 3rd century BC school of thought that his teachings unveiled beautiful clarity on, helping me better appreciate what the Stoics were actually about. For you see, Stoic teachings at times can feel like real downers, and I find they aren't easily distinguished from just don't care about anything. This book helps in emphasizing a theme of righteous indifference rather than just plain indifference, and I really enjoyed to unpack Epictetus' understanding of this. The translator, Robert Dobbin, gives an intro. Whether human affairs are directed by fate's unalterable necessity or by chance, the wisest of philosophers disagree. Epicureans insist that heaven is unconcerned with our birth and death, is unconcerned in fact with human beings generally, with the result that good people often suffer while wicked people thrive. The Stoics disagree, maintaining that although things happen according to fate, this depends not on the movement of the planets, but on the principles and logic of natural causality. The school concedes to us the freedom to choose our own lives. They maintain that popular ideas of good and bad are wrong. Many people who appear to be in dire circumstances are actually happy provided that they deal with their situation bravely. Others, regardless of how many possessions they have, are miserable because they do not know how to use the gifts of fortune wisely. Claude Monet once said, "Merely think, here is a little square of blue, here an oblong of pink, here a streak of yellow, and paint it just as it looks to you." Herein lies a great principle, a contentment in one's own relativity, a focus not on how things are, but on how you yourself see things. Robert Dobbin continues, "The Stoic school leaves us free to choose our own lives. Confidence in this capacity, namely choice, is a key postulate of the Discourses. The faculty of choice distinguishes humans from irrational animals. We can make considered choices among impressions or appearances, meaning anything that comes within our range of senses, thoughts, and feelings." On this, Epictetus himself says, "Man, the rational animal, can put up with anything except what seems to him irrational. Whatever is rational is tolerable. Physical hardships are not intolerable by nature. The Spartans, for instance, gladly submit to being whipped, because they are taught it is done for good reason. But what about being hanged? Isn't that intolerable? Well, people frequently go and hang themselves, whether they judge that is a reasonable course of action." In short, reflection will show that people are put off by nothing so much as what they think is unreasonable. He later adds, "The gods have given us the best and most efficacious gift, the ability to make good use of impressions. Other capacities they did not put in our power. Was it because they did not want to? Personally, I believe that they would have endowed us with those others too, had they been able. Well, what does Zeus say? Epictetus, if it were possible, I would have made your little body and possessions both free and unrestricted. As it is though, make no mistake, this body does not belong to you. It is only cunningly constructed clay. And since I could not make the body yours, I have given you a portion of myself instead, the power of positive and negative impulse, of desire and aversion. The power, in other words, of making good use of impressions. If you take care of it and identify with it, you will never be blocked or frustrated. You won't have to complain and never will need to blame or flatter anyone. Is that enough to satisfy you?" It is more than enough, thank you. First of all, I delighted in how colorful Epictetus' teachings were, starting off with an argument and breaking off into more dialogic drama. It gave the book a lovely, quirky little rhythm to engage with. But secondly, this notion that Zeus mentioned of identifying with your impressions has a lot of content worth reflecting on. One angle of it that we saw above with Spartan severity and hanging out is that things aren't as much good or bad as much as how your positive reinforcement and mindset is. It's fascinating for me because it's not quite the same as saying it isn't wrong to whip or hang out, but rather of paying more attention to the underlying reactions, a wrong reaction to truth or a correct reaction to falsity. For instance, bodily severity, food deprivation, intentional nudity, harshness to children, all have their issues and dangers. And they might be true dangers, but it is also true that it hardened those brutal Spartans. And it's that truth that colored and shaped how they saw their methods, making it easier to ignore the other less convenient truths, because one identifies more with the truth befitting a warrior. In fact, one source I read regarding the Spartans also mentioned that the point of the bodily severity wasn't as much the physical aspects as much as it was the mental fortitude. Man can put up with anything except what seems to him irrational. So, objective reality is true, no duh, and worthy of contemplation. But beware, relativism, perception, and impression are in themselves objective. Both should be handled with their cares. And that's why Zeus says, if you take care of it and identify with impressions, you will never be blocked or frustrated. How then do we neglect our impressions? How do they frustrate? Well, this complements nicely with another concept within the book. Is freedom the ability to pursue passions and ambitions, or is freedom the ability to not be driven by passions and ambitions? Previously on the reading plan, we had In the Buddha's Words, an introduction to Buddhism from an ardent monk, and a key part of the Buddha's enlightenment was an understanding that A, his dissatisfaction found over achieving his dreams, and B, his dissatisfaction over depriving himself as a monk was itself the wisdom, recognizing that the discomforts of both extremes held a message about the balance in the middle. What a thoroughly delightful insight, at least in my opinion. Not that he admonishes hedonism. The Buddha actually encourages that we enjoy pleasure, as long as it is considered that pleasure is bound up with pain. They are interwoven, they complement each other. It might even be that pleasure is a lack of pain. It brought clarity to the human tendency to making dreams seem bigger than they are, or making the paths to them seem less involved than they are, thus making much ado about nothing. Okay, nothing may be too harsh a word, but it's to help cut through the fog, to help cut through infatuation. Think of a shiny brand new smartphone. It feels more weighty, doesn't it, when brand new in the hand? And one starts to think, ooh, now it would be much easier to do such and such, or ooh, think of how I shall customize it, or oh, the camera's fidelity, or oh, look how hip I'll be when pulling it out of my pocket to check the time. But reflecting more sharply on these imaginations and use case scenario, one may start to realize that the weightinesses are kinda sorta realistically meaningless. Sooner or later, the phone's utility becomes mundane, perhaps contemptuous even. One may notice features or issues they wouldn't have earlier noticed or considered. The phone starts to become more still, quieter, subdued, and in that, there comes another subtle breeze of appreciation over the phone and its relatively excessive ability to do, well, nothing. By nothing, I mean the nothings of daily life. One becomes dispassioned, but also a side effect is one becomes positively more present. It's a very almost distasteful kind of happiness, but one that's more logical, more aware, more practical, less infatuated. And that's what I link Epictetus' Impressionism with. To wrap up, I'll just quote from Epictetus himself. As mentioned prior, I liked his somewhat simple, approachable style, and here are some passages on freedom that I cherish. Free is the person who lives as he wishes and cannot be coerced, impeded, or compelled, whose impulses cannot be thwarted, who always gets what he desires and never has to experience what he would rather avoid. Now, who would want to go through life ignorant of how to achieve this? No one! Who wants to live life with delusion and prejudice, being unjust, undisciplined, mean, and ungrateful? No one! No bad person then lives the way he wants, and no bad man is free. Who wants to live life experiencing sadness, envy, and pity, being frustrated in their desires, and liable to experience what they want to avoid? No one! So can we find any bad person who is without sadness, fear, frustration, or misfortune? No. No more then can we find a bad person who is free. What a perplexing idea! Freedom, therefore, is not the ability to do whatever one desires, but whatever is good. Okay, I'll shut up for real now. He continues, now consider, is everything under our control? Or are there some things we control and others that we don't? What do you mean? Is it within your power to have your body perform perfectly whenever you want? No. Or be in good health? No. Or attractive? No. Well then, the body isn't yours and is subject to everything physically stronger than it. Granted. What about land? Can you have as much as you want, for as long as you want, in the condition that you prefer? No. And what about slaves? No. Clothing? No. House? No. Horses? No. And if more than anything else you want your children to live, or your wife, your brother, or your friends, is this within your power to effect? No. Is there nothing that is under your authority that you have exclusive control over? I don't know. Can anyone force you to choose something to which you're opposed? They can when they threaten me with death. But what if you don't fear death? Are you still in that person's thrall? No. Is your attitude towards death your affair then? It is. Therefore, your will is your own business too. I grant it, but suppose I choose to walk and someone obstructs me. What part of you will they obstruct? My body. But the upshot is, now I'm not allowed to walk. Whoever told you walking is your irrevocable privilege? I said only that the will to walk could not be obstructed. Where use of the body and its cooperation are concerned, you've long been told that that isn't your responsibility. Very well. And can you be forced by anyone to desire something against your will? No. By process of logical elimination, the conclusion emerges that we will come through safely only by allying ourselves with God. What do you mean? Acting in such a way that whatever God wants, we want too, and by inversion, whatever he does not want, this we do not want either. Just a quick aside here, if you don't find yourself too much a religious person, I believe his sentiments can still be reserved by remembering how he also addresses the secular-minded in his book. To Epictetus, it's a matter of following patterns seen in nature that he bases his teachings in. In that sense, everyone can relate to his sayings, since everyone agrees on pattern recognition, they just disagree on interpretations. Basically, he ambiguously uses Zeus both theistically and metaphorically, at least on how I understand his quick exploration on belief system. So God can therefore be thought of as the universe, Mother Nature, or society if you'd like. Okay, I'll shut up for real now. Moving forwards, he says, pay attention to the pattern of God's purpose and design. To start off with then, what has he given me as mine outright, and what has he reserved for himself? He has conferred on me the functions of the will, made them mine and made them proof against resistance or obstruction. But the body, which is made of clay, he assigned it its place in the cosmic cycle, the same as other material things like my furniture, my house, my wife, and children. So don't go up against God by hoping for what is unattainable, namely to keep forever what doesn't really belong to you. Keep them in the spirit they were given for as long as possible. If he gives, he also takes away. For how did I come upon these belongings in the first place? From my Father, who got them from his. So why not enjoy the feast and pageant while it's given to you to do so? Then, when he ushers you out, go with thanks and reverence for what you were privileged for a time to see and hear. No, I want to keep celebrating. Don't be so greedy. Aren't you ever satisfied? But I'd like my wife and children to remain with me. Why? Are they yours? They belong to the one who gave them to you. Don't presume to take what isn't yours. Why did he bring me into the world on these conditions? If the conditions don't suit you? He doesn't need a heckler. He wants people keen to participate in the revels, who would sooner applaud and favor the festival with their praise. As for those who are grumpy, even when they are invited, they don't act as if they're on holiday. Instead, they whine, they curse their fate, their luck, and their company. They don't appreciate what they have. So now I have to live my life among the mob? The mob? You mean crowds? What's wrong with crowds? I don't like crowds. They're a nuisance. Look upon it as tranquility and play along with it for the duration. Talk to yourself, train your thoughts, and shape your preconceptions. If you happen upon a crowd, call it a sporting event, a festival or celebration, and try to keep holiday with the people. We like to see herds of cows or horses. We delight in the sight of a fleet of boats. Why hate the sight of a gathering of human beings? But they deafen me with their shouting. So your hearing is offended. What does it have to do with you? Your power of using impressions isn't diminished, is it? Just keep in mind the central questions. What is mine? What is not mine? What has been given to me? What does God want me to do or not do now? This was a beautiful collection from Epictetus. Just such magnificent profundity to think on the message, you don't belong to yourself, so pay respects. It can feel encouraging in times of peace, but obviously extremely bitter and sobering in times where life slowly and brutally presses down your windpipe. Epictetus can and does feel a little too blunt and unreachably holy in this book, especially regarding death, flogging, abuse. But I like to think the graces he leaves open for us weak-hearted folk. For example, when he sometimes says, "Look upon it as tranquility, talk to yourself, train yourself," is a sign that he knows that this so-called slavery, by which I mean the vicious fear of our bodies not to be torn apart, is just natural and intuitive to us human beings and to our human experience. Which means that the point of his bluntness is like a pep talk from a coach, a push towards a logical mastery of the self. That it's less productive to succumb to dejection over pains that even other less fortunate people are experiencing more severely. That, I think, is a softer message to take home. Simply talking to yourself, training yourself, an encouragement against a defeatist mind. Tomorrow is another day. One tiny disagreement I might have with the message, or let me just call it an addition I have about something positive that we can learn about dejection over ruin and loss. Even for bad people who crave control so desperately that they turn to greed, spite, abuse, and pride. It's unhealthy to let such base passions drive you, for sure. But that we should even struggle, I think, is a message, an echo, a symbol that I believe comes from God. How can one sleep sound in their house while being fully aware of a security risk or flaw? Trust and faith are necessary to help us function. And I think a more positive, hopeful addition I would add to any Stoic adventures I have in the future would be to train myself in expecting something concrete. How pleasant would it be to tell me that my wife, children, and maybe even my body could be fine? That even though now is another day of starvation, that I can bank on a banquet tomorrow. The message would land a little bit better if Epictetus's portrayal of Zeus's apparent distance regarding death, ruin, loss were more temporary. Rather than saying, "Epictetus, if it were possible, I would have made your little body and possessions both free and unrestricted," he instead says, "Epictetus, I am working to make your little body and possessions both free and unrestricted." Do you see how that shift changes the framework? In a sense, it makes my prior question here feel like a false dichotomy. Is freedom the ability to pursue passions and ambitions, or is freedom the ability to not be driven by passions and ambitions? I wrote that part months before my present meditations. It's not so much where my freedom is coming from, whether it's unhealthy to be controlled by passion, or obviously unhealthy to be physically held captive. You can look at this from another side and say, it hurts not to be free. I think that a more optimistic posture would be one where there was something objective, eternal, constant that could be banked upon, relied upon. That things like fate or natural causality or the movement of the planets, although they can seem random and unbothered, house within them eventual benevolence. Thanks everyone so much for watching these little ramblings of mine. Have a good day.